So, Team Sestito. Your name is Tim and surname Sestito. It's a little bit Italian, ain't it?
My grandparents on my father's side immigrated to the United States. They were just kids when their parents brought them over. So, yeah, I have Italian descent, I guess, or
Really?
blood.
Italian?
Yes, yeah. It's embarrassing to say though. I've never been there, so it's something that at some point I plan to do.
Well, you're a little bit sometimes like aggressive on the ice.
Is that a trait of Italians? Maybe. I kind of have, my mom's Irish, so maybe I have an Irish temper too. So an Irish-Italian mix, maybe that's why. But it's just how I've always played.
So I know that you have a brother. You're not similar with him.
If he was sitting next to me, you wouldn't think we were related. He's a lot bigger. I don't know what it is in centimeters, but he's 6'4" or 6'5", about 240 pounds. So he's a big guy. He looks very Italian. Has more of a mean streak than I do. So, but two guys from a small city in the U.S. who've made a living out of playing hockey.
But he wanted to be a hockey player like you?
Yeah. When I was 17, I went away to play juniors, and he kind of wanted to do the same thing. And a couple years later, we ended up on the same team, and it's just kind of how it's went.
Sorry, in the same team?
Yeah, we played 1 year together in the OHL. I was 20, he was 17, and I think the next year he got drafted, and we've crossed paths in the minors, played against each other a couple times, and he's carved out a nice little career for himself.
So, do you have any hobbies that don't relate to hockey? Just please, no golf.
Gosh, well, in the summer I do like golfing, but as I've gotten older and have kids, it's more centered around my family. I just like teaching my kids anything like sports or tying their shoes. Just spending time with them is probably my biggest hobby, where it's a big change. You go from just worrying about yourself to caring for two little midgets. It's
Boys?
I've got a girl and a boy, so one of each, and they keep me busy. They keep me occupied.
Could you imagine that this small boy could be a hockey player?
I mean, looking back, yeah, it seems like that's the case. But growing up in the States, I played a lot of sports. I played football, American football, baseball, dabbled in golf. So it was just hockey was my thing. Just when I was a kid, it was my favorite thing to do, and I used to score a lot of goals when I was young, and then I had fun doing it, so I just stuck with it.
You mentioned American football. No one can explain me the rules. No one. It's so popular in America.
Yeah.
But only in America, or
Yeah. I think they're trying to expand a little bit. I know they've been playing some games in London. Yeah, but it's huge. It's the biggest sport in America by far. It's probably double or maybe triple by the next.
To play or to watch it?
It's a very physical sport to play, but everybody can watch and enjoy it. I think this probably isn't the right thing to say, but there's a ton of gambling in the U.S. too, so everybody gambles on football, or it keeps them interested. So there's the fantasy football aspect. There's a lot of stuff that make it really big, but playing it is a very physical, demanding thing, where we're starting to see a lot of former players who can't walk or have head problems. So it's a tough sport.
What can you say about your school times? You were a good schooler, good marks.
I tried to do well. I did well enough where I didn't have to put a lot of effort in, but that kind of got me in trouble sometimes too, where you think you were more prepared than you were. So I always took pride in getting good grades, and I was lucky enough to have good parents who helped me out quite a bit too with my education.
What's your favorite food, favorite music in your life?
Music, I like anything with like an acoustic guitar in it. Just kind of laid back. It seems like when I came here, a lot of the guys asked me if I like country music. I don't know if that's a stereotype of Americans, but I really don't. That's the one kind of music I just can't get into. So, food, I like pretty much everything. Italian, sushi, pizza. My wife's trying to get me to eat Indian food. That's one I just can't wrap my head around. So everything except for that.
I think it's after Matt Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Because I asked him, he liked it really, and he told me that in the future, when he will be older, as I remember, he want to have a big car, big car to drive and to hear the
Country music. Yeah, exactly. I mean it is popular in the U.S., but just for me, not so much. It's gonna sound weird, but I try to stay anti-superstitious. So if I start doing something regularly, I just try to switch it up, just so I don't get into my head too much. So if I tape my stick one way, I'll tape it a different way, or just to not be superstitious.
Okay, but you're a calm person, or maybe aggressive?
No, I think before the game, I think I'm pretty laid back. I don't say a ton, kind of quiet. And then when the game starts, I don't know, it's not like I'm a different person, but I want to win, and I'll do whatever it takes to try to win. So if that means being physical or saying something, then that's where I go.
Who's the most positive person in the team Dynamo Riga?
Most positive?
Super active.
Eddie Kulda's pretty positive for being a young guy. He's not afraid to talk. But we've got a lot of good guys. Andrasis, Meeks Andrasis is a good guy. Everybody's pretty good. I don't want to point out one and leave somebody out, but Kulda likes to run his mouth a little bit. I like giving him a hard time because he's about 10 years younger than me. So.
Does it matter?
Yeah. He's a good kid. I enjoy hanging out with him. He's kind of my tour guide when we're in Russia and in other places. So, if I had to pick one of the Latvian guys, it'd be him. Yeah.
Can you say something about American Hockey League? Because there was a period when you played in the Devils again in the American Hockey League, again in the Devils. So, what happened? What can you say about that?
The last year I was there, I think I was up and down maybe 6 or 7 times in 2 weeks. But it was just it was injuries to the big club. Not to me, just other guys. And then guys would get healthy, and it'd be a numbers game, and I'd go back to the minor leagues, and then somebody else got hurt or sick, and I'd get a phone call and go right back. So going up to the NHL is always the best feeling in the world, and then going back down to the minor leagues is always the worst feeling. So I had a roller coaster of emotions there for a couple weeks, and even the 6 years that I played there.
You remember that first game?
For the NHL, yeah. My very first NHL game was with the Oilers in Edmonton, and it's something I'll never forget. The game itself felt like it was 2 minutes long. It went so quick. It was just a culmination of a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, tears, and luck to get called up and to play that game. So I was very grateful for it. And then I think every game after that, I always tried to play it like it'd be my last one, because I was never guaranteed anything. So I think I was very fortunate to play 100-plus NHL games where I was never drafted. I was always I'm not a high prospect by any means. So to get 100 games in, was something I'm pretty proud of.
I can understand that you're talking with a big love about NHL.
I think like anybody, or especially me as a North American, you always want to play at the highest level, and for me that's what the NHL was. And, you don't realize how difficult it is to get there until you're there and you've tasted it and you want to get back. So I was never a big goal scorer in juniors or in the minor leagues, so I've always gotten there on just hard work and dedication. Before I got to an offer, I didn't think I'd be coming here. That wasn't anything I was actively searching for, so it was kind of slow this off season for a lot of guys in my situation in North America. And this kind of came up in mid-July, and I had about 5 hours to think about it, and we decided to come, and I'm pretty happy we made that decision.
You said my situation. What the situation?
I was a free agent. It was the first time in a long time that I was a free agent. I always had something with the Devils for 6 years, and before that I had other stuff. So the NHL and even the American leagues, it's getting a lot younger. A lot of younger players are playing everywhere. So when you start pushing 30 and above, the spots are more limited.
First impression about CHL?
It's a great league. I was pretty nervous. I've never been outside of North America before I came here, so I couldn't find Latvia on a map if you asked me to. I didn't know anything about any teams, but I think that's what's helped me is I go into every game. I don't know anybody. I don't know who anybody is. I just go out and play. So sometimes I get in my own head too much, and being able to stay out of it, I think, has helped me this season.
Was it your decision, or someone gave good comment about Latvia maybe, or
well,
Russian league?
After I got the offer, I spoke with a couple former teammates who played here, not for Riga, but in the KHL, and they all had great things to say about living in Riga and being here. And my agent had a former client who was here too, so I spoke with him, and he had great things to say, and they were all right. I mean, this place has been amazing.
I'm really big fan of the Detroit Red Wings, so I can't say something more about the New Jersey Devils. Are you interested right now in this team?
I still keep track, just because I have a lot of friends in the organization, both in the NHL and in the American League. So, I'll watch highlights and stuff. But for the longest time, the Devils were always known as being a defensive-minded organization and team. That's just how we always played. And, we always had a great goalie in Martin Brodeur, was one of the top goalies ever. So that was just always our style. But I think it helped that I was with that organization, because that's something that I've always prided myself on is playing good defensively and then trying to chip in when I can. So I learned a lot of good habits over my 6 years there.
For example?
Just being responsible in your own end and not sacrificing defense for chances to score goals. It's always been preached to take care of your own end first, and whether that's blocking shots or taking guys' sticks away, it's just little stuff. There was always something big with the Devils, and just little habits, getting pucks out, trying to be good on the penalty kill is always something that I liked doing and tried to excel at. I grew up a big Boston Bruins fan. I don't know why, but living in central New York, we always got Bruins games on TV. So when I was a kid, those are the games I watched, and I was a big fan of Ray Bourque. He was a defenseman, but he was the captain. He was the best player. It was just somebody I always was drawn to, and growing up as a kid, I was a Bruins fan, and just always was. I don't know. I couldn't tell you why, but from being from New York and not liking the Rangers or Islanders or Sabres, it was kind of odd.
But what about this season? So maybe you know the results from the previous times? How played this team? No, had
Uh,
an impression.
I just knew they hadn't made the playoffs for the last year or two. Obviously this season it didn't go how we planned. There's been a lot of turmoil and upheaval, it seems like. But I can't say enough good things about all the guys in the room. All the players and coaches, both that are here now and former, I think came to the rink every day trying to win, putting work in and effort. And, for various reasons, we didn't have the results that we wanted. And it's frustrating. I mean, being 31 years old now, all I want to do is win. I don't care how it gets done. I want to win games and win a championship. So it was definitely frustrating from that aspect. I think we have a good team full of strong players. I think maybe not the star power of Laurie's or somebody like that, but I mean, this team, especially the Latvian guys, are really good hockey players. And I think when we play a certain way, we play better. When we play physical and maybe a little more simple, we're a better hockey team than when we try to be a little fancier. And I think that's when it gets us in trouble, when we're trying for an extra pass instead of just shooting it on net and getting rebounds. I thought we were very physical. There were a lot of hits that game. There was a fight. I thought all the little things were done that game, and that's why we were successful.
But do you like to fight, or it's just emotions? You need to.
No, I don't. I definitely don't like it. There's always a risk of getting injured, and
But you fight. You fight all the time.
yeah, I think it's needed. Whether it's, I think I did it once in Spartak to kind of spark our team because we were just sleeping basically through the first period, or to stand up for myself or for a teammate. I was, I don't know what the right word is, but excited and happy that Gintz fought the other night, fought the guy who kind of hit me from behind a little bit. Just to know somebody's got your back and will stand up for you, I think that's shows that we are a team and that we have each other's back and we're there for each other. So, no, I don't like doing it, but I've got no problem doing it if the moment calls for it.
There was no comment from the coach, go and kill them. It
No,
was your
no,
decision.
yeah, I don't think you need the coach to tell you. Everybody knows what's going on, and if I could change some rules in this league, it'd be this fight twice and get suspended nonsense. It seems kind of ridiculous, but I understand kind of why they don't want just guys running around fighting every game. I get it, but no, if somebody's taking liberties with our players, I'll be one of the first ones out there trying to stop it.
But for example, we have in a team Alexander Yerafeev.
Yep.
Yeah. And your friend Hulda.
Yeah.
Can you just watch them say he's Latvian, he's Russian?
When I first got here, no. I've started to figure it out as maybe even the last month or two, just how more guys identify with Russian or they speak Russian better than Latvian. I didn't realize that at all. So yeah.
Visually there is no.
Visually, no, but just listening to the guys speaking Russian and who speaks Latvian, and
Okay, you have a mix in the head.
yeah, now I kind of got it sorted out.
You were a little bit Latvian for us, and we hope that you will not run away in another team in KHL.
I don't want to go anywhere else. I mean, I love playing here. I love the environment, and I love the fans. I'm in a position where I'm playing this game because I love it, not for paychecks. So it's not like you got to be the highest bidder or something for me. It's got to be a great fit for myself, hockey-wise, but more importantly for my family. And I think my wife and kids have absolutely loved it here. There's just so much for them to do, and the people have been so great. So, you know, we'll see in the off season where things go. But I have no bad things to say about Riga. I've loved every minute here.